Hello and welcome to episode 59 of Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where I talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie.
I'm Thom.
And I'm Ben.
Today we're talking about the 2001 film Freddy Got Fingered. This will contain spoilers.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We are back.
Okay.
This was not a film.
What's this? I have to give a plot summary.
Yeah.
A what summary? Sorry, is it again?
I think the word you're looking for is plot. And
What?
the reason you
Isn't that
can't...
like what Guy Fawkes did?
Ha, yeah. It's a joke. The reason you're struggling so hard is because this film doesn't really have one.
It does. It has enough of a plot so that IMDb can have a description.
I mean, I'll preface this by saying, like, I looked it up beforehand. I can't remember if it was IMDb or something, but like somewhere said that the whole plot was like a man kidnaps his father and takes him to Pakistan, and then they both get kidnapped. But that's just happens in the last like 5 minutes of the film. I was expecting another like
The
Joker.
main plot is Gordon, not Freddy. Gordon, the main character, wants to be like an animator, but he has to work at a cheese factory. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Near the end, he becomes an animator, and then there's other things along the way, like being in a relationship with this girl Betty, who at first I thought was going to be set up as like a one-off, not great joke of just like, haha, she is disabled,
yeah,
but then
it
actually
wouldn't
she
date a
gets probably the
disabled
most like in-depth and well-looked-upon character of the whole film.
Yeah, and she's
That's
just
the only
from
positive
Freddy,
I can
of
say
course.
about it. Apart from Freddy.
Yeah.
The only
main
thing
character of
good
this.
I can say about this film is that they don't ridicule disabled people. Everyone, give a hand.
Yeah.
I mean, some of
Still
the
use the R
characters
slur
in-
like 3 times,
do,
but you know.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a weird character because you kind of expect her to be the straight man, like the one like character that's normal amongst all of this other chaos. But then it just turns out that, or I mean, at least I did. Like
You're introduced to a flipping cream hot over.
Yeah, well, you know, I figured like once
I see what you mean. I mean,
like, once,
in comparison
once
to
it
Gord.
was clear that she wasn't just a one-off gag, like I assumed she was going to be a bit more like sensible, but then it turns out that she's just like,
When? I'm sorry, but when?
well, like in the
I don't
brief like
understand.
1 or 2 minutes before it turns out that she's like obsessed with like sucking him off.
What, you mean the bit where he's whacking her shins with a stick?
Yeah, the bit right before he starts whacking her shins.
What, you mean the bit where she's
they go
raving
around
about
to-
rocket science and putting rocket propellers on her wheelchair? Which
No, I see what you mean. Like, as soon as when you get past the fact that she's like flipping those things, I think the first time she's introduced, she's not like overly weird. But then,
Well, I
the
mean, to be
second time
fair,
you meet her,
I think
she
there
has
was...
one of the 2 jokes I liked.
I didn't really like
What was that?
notice like her too much because probably still like recovering from lots of the other scenes that Freddy had just not Freddy, Gordon.
the one of the okay the 50% of good jokes in this film, one of is from her, which was so when she's flipping the cream pots, and then Gordon says, "A hospital's always this fun," and she says, "No, sometimes people die of cancer."
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
There we go. That was a good joke. Well done.
And what was the
Comedy
other joke?
film has two good
You're
jokes.
gonna
The
spoil
other
it now.
joke is right at the end, because Gordon's such an insufferable character. But you know when he breaks into David Davidson's office towards the end,
Yeah.
and then like is screaming and wailing around, and as he always is in every scene, and like throws the bag on his desk. He's like, "Look inside," and then Davidson is like, "Is there a bomb in there, Gord?"
Oh, I didn't
And
even know that was a joke.
I was kind of like,
I was just kind of like,
Yeah.
alright. I feel like
but
if-
everything else I hate.
What? So you're telling me that you didn't find any parts involving Gord hilarious?
but the funny
Oh,
horse
the bit where
penis.
the
Funny elephant
funny-
penis.
the funny scene where he cuts open a deer
Oh.
and wears its skin on him
I mean,
as he
to be-
rubs himself in its entrails was hilarious.
To be fair, I was kind of.
Who
I
else
don't-
was
it didn't-
expecting him to engage in intercourse with the
Yeah,
animal?
I know. I was kind of relieved when he did that because he was on about like getting inside
Yeah,
the
oh.
animal. I was like, no, please.
Oh yeah,
So
I
it was
mean
kind of a
already
relief when
as
he
soon as
only
they
did that.
said that line, I was like, oh god, they're gonna do. I was like, first I was almost like, oh, they're gonna make a cringy joke about like having sex with animals just after that line, but then it didn't happen right away, and I was like, oh no, oh, it's gonna do something awful. But I guess it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But I knew that this film was gonna be terrible when in like the first 10 or 15 minutes, when he sets off on his journey to become an animator, like it's literally just the start of it, like a travel montage, and then he veers off the road to look at a horse penis, and then
It's funny.
rub it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Funny,
It's like
funny
the whole
penis,
plot
it's
derails,
big.
and it's like there's such manic editing where there's no space to breathe. There's just constantly vile things happening on the screen.
Oh,
I know.
I felt my stomach turning. There's
I
a
wanted to-
scene in like an institute for like children that have been sexually assaulted where they're watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I was reminded of a much easier film to hold my stomach to than this.
man. Okay, I'm
I
gonna
mean-
jump around a bit in the film, but like another example of like like really bad editing, and just the level of comedy this movie goes for. It's like, you know, the hospital scene where he's visiting Freddy, and then the woman's pregnant, and then her baby
Oh,
starts
God.
coming. He puts on a doctor's jacket and is like, I'm a doctor, now spread your legs for me. I thought that was going to be it. That was just going to be a really bad, like, joke. But then it turns out that she starts delivering the baby. He, like, delivers the baby for her, and then, like, she's like, cut the umbilical cord. He bites the umbilical cord,
Oh, that bit was so awful.
then starts swinging the baby around like a bloody helicopter propeller by the umbilical cord, and somehow
It's foreshadowing to the helicopter later on.
it isn't dead by the end of it.
No,
Yeah.
it suggests he brings them back to life. At first, it's like it tries to make a joke. It's like, haha, the child is stillborn. It's like, wow, okay. Oh,
Haha, that's
not
funny.
a thing I
Isn't
would
it?
have thought would be a joke, but yeah, that happens. And I know we're jumping around a lot, but I think it's just to demonstrate the awful like pacing of this film.
I mean, I'll be honest,
It's a
it didn't seem
stylistic
like
choice.
it didn't seem like it had any sort of like traditional film structure at all. Because usually you'd have like the start of the film being more exposition based, but because you were suddenly thrown into it, and then it kind of diverts your attention to all these. It's basically reacting. It's treating the audience like they have an attention span of about a minute. And to be honest, I'm not really sure who this film is designed for, because some of the themes in it are way too mature. Well, not themes, but like some of the
Jokes.
yeah, like the things that you see and stuff. Like, I think this is rated an 18. So, but it does seem like the way that the main character's acting is almost like Mr. Bean-esque. So it has that weird blend of like immature comedy with like these really weirdly grown up ideas in it. And I think when they just try and chuck those, they just like chuck those two things together in a way that's just so jarring and doesn't work whatsoever. And when you couple that with the awful pacing, it just, yeah.
It felt like it was written by like a 14-year-old boy who had just watched one episode of South Park.
Yeah.
And not realised that part of it is supposed to be satire. Like, it felt like every scene was just a chance for within 10 seconds Gordon to start like wailing around and screaming at everyone.
Yeah.
Like, literally, a scene which I thought was going to be okay, where it's supposed to show like his monotonous work in like a cheese sandwich factory. Literally, like within 5 seconds, he jumps on the conveyor belt, gets a huge sausage, and starts like waving it around. It's like, oh, look, the sausage, it looks like a willy.
About that was just the fact that there was absolutely no reaction from any of the other workers.
As if he does it all the time.
Yeah.
Oh man,
But that was like 2 minutes after the horse section.
Oh, the way I described it was like it's like a mix between a 5-year-old wrote it and like a 12-year-old who's just discovered like sex, and it's like, oh, it's funny sex, but like it's mixed with you know, if like a 5-year-old would write a comedy story or something, and like it'll obviously just like be really weird and silly, and there would be like just go in a room and scream. It's like,
but it's not even like it. Some of the things would maybe work if Gordon was like actually
likable,
like a good character. Like, one of the notes I wrote was that Gordon is such an irredeemable character that the movie is no fun because he's just awful.
He's like honestly just such a terrible person. Like the title of the movie comes from like he's in a family therapy session because he's like has an argument with his parents, and then he like says that he gets like angry, and then he says that his dad like sexually abused his brother Freddy and like just lied about it. Isn't that hilarious? That was really funny.
I also
funny
found it funny when his girlfriend sexually assaulted him.
Yeah, but it seems like because as you're saying, like the protagonist, if you can even call it that, is so unrelatable and irredeemable, and so you just hate him so much. At least if you had some sort of supporting character, like Ben was saying before about how you'd expect Betty to be maybe initially, that kind of acts as more of like a mouthpiece for the audience in this bizarre situations, and I think that would have been more bearable just because you'd have had sort of someone in the film to point out how ridiculous all of this was. But
if
because all of the characters are so stupid and silly, it means that you can't really relate to any of them, and therefore you don't really connect with any character within it.
Well, the issue is like if there was a character in there who like pointed out that all of this is silly, then you'd realize that the film doesn't actually believe that this is like it doesn't actually believe that it's good, like actually funny or something. You'd be like, oh, it's kind of just a weird like attempt at making you laugh by doing weird outlandish things that just didn't work. Versus like here, there's nothing to like indicate that just the director / writer / star didn't like think that this was just like his masterpiece or something. Like, you know, is there's nothing in here that makes it seem like he doesn't actually just believe this is the funniest stuff in the world. Like,
it felt like the character was conflicting where they weren't sure whether to just make him like a caricature, just completely outlandish, or kind of like I kept getting like Mark from Peep Show vibes, but without any like because Mark from Peep Show is another interesting character to look at because he is a terrible person, but he keeps almost doing the right thing, so you can kind of like root for that to happen.
Yeah, at least you.
And then it makes funny situations. Like there was an idea that I liked where he tried really hard to keep up this lie that he was an investor, and he had like graphs and everything and faked receiving phone calls and stuff like that. And you know, if it was kind of more of a mild-mannered character who's just got himself in this position because he's really awkward, I think that could have been a funny scene. But instead, of course, it descends into him shouting, and then people fall into things and break them.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And literally a waiter says, "This is a fancy restaurant." What waiter in like a high-end establishment says, "This is a fancy restaurant"?
You don't even
It's
say.
more evidence that it was written by a 5-year-old.
I mean, take the word fancy out of it. Just like, apart from that, no one would ever call their establishment fancy. Of all the words you could use to describe it, like, just take that out of it. You still got like, you could just have said like, "This is a restaurant" or something, and it's like, you know, this is like a public place, but it's and also right, that's that like comparison with Mark from Peep Show. At least like occasionally, like you can sort of relate to like Mark's thought processes, even if like
That's what I mean.
Yeah, and like here, there's nothing, absolutely nothing about Gordon that you can even relate to in the slightest. He's just the most outlandish, just terrible person that just. I mean, maybe even if like they'd said that he was like mentally ill or something. I mean, obviously that would like come across badly as making fun of mentally ill people, but like, but I'd say that would be better in the long run for the story of the like the plot. Like at least then you'd have some reasoning for why he's just so everywhere. So you know.
It feels like there's no really clear trajectory for his character, and it allows him to not really develop at all, because the way that the film's paced, and therefore the way that you kind of introduced to the character as he progresses, is it seems like he's got these conflicting goals, if you want to call them that. So at some points he's trying to kind of live up to what his father expects from him, but at the same time he also is like harnessing that immaturity and trying to rebel against his dad with just like really outlandish things, like obviously accusing him of sexual assault and stuff, but you're never really sure what his actual goal is, and I don't think he really ever is shown to have a clear goal. And his character is just so poorly written and poorly acted that I think it just overshadows anything else in this film that could potentially get like a tiny bit of credit, just because of how stupid the lead role is.
All right, are you ready? I'll go on a really quick rant about something I hated. Right, so this film you get from the very start. Well, not like right at the very start, because it just starts out like a boring like travel montage, but as soon as you throw it into it with like the horse joke and everything, it's just like, oh, this is just gonna be an immature mess of a film with like really terrible jokes, and like, you know, it was worse than Kangaroo Jack definitely in the first 20 minutes, because at least with Kangaroo Jack you could like laugh at the fact that it exists maybe. But just okay, so it's established that that's what this film is, but they will somehow try and like, I guess I don't know why they did it, but like forcefully insert like character development moments, or like, well, inverted commas character development moments, like you remember that scene where Betty's working on the rocket things for a wheelchair, and Gordon comes up to her and is like, I'm a failure. Everything is bad. Everything is terrible. You can't do your thing. I can't do my thing. We're both losers, or whatever his line was. And it's like, ugh. And they have this like insufferable like stock music over it as well. It's just like, ugh, what are you trying to do? Make this like a weird like drama of some sort, like. And then later on in the film, when like he's rich and everything, and he gets that helicopter and like goes up to her and stuff, and it's like, and they have the insufferable stock music again, and it's like, I love you, and she's like, oh, I don't care about your money, I just want to suck you off, and it's like, it was so ridiculous and unneeded. Like, I know I criticize the film for not having like a plot or like a standard movie plot, but the fact that this was like shoved in there amongst this like garbage,
it was more that it felt kind of pinned on after the fact, rather than, it's not like they had thought out to put in this character development, or even do a kind of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia thing where you set up the character development and then intentionally go against it.
Yeah,
it was just kind of,
it was just like afterwards they
shoved in.
Yeah, it was like afterwards they
were
were
like,
oh,
this is the character development thing, but then the last 15 minutes is just them like messing around in Pakistan or whatever, and it's like,
yeah,
there's
funny
just
elephant penis.
no point.
Funny elephant penis.
Funny.
Shoots
There's
his load.
no consistency with his character either, and especially, I think that's best summed up with the relationship with his dad, who you know is furious, and then he's fine again, and then he walks in on him being like dressed backwards or something. And, oh, it's all forgiven. Then there's that kerfuffle in the restaurant, and he walks into him playing the piano with like dangling sausages on the roof. Don't ask, but
I just sighed at that one and just accepted it. Like at that point, I'd spent far too much of my energy being angry at the film already.
But there's a time and a place for kind of that bizarre humour. Like, I feel like parts of this kind of reminded me of when we did Joker from 1991, but I feel like that handled it a lot better because, I mean, obviously it wasn't a perfect film by any means, but I feel like the character in that, although he was similar at times in kind of this over-the-top acting and stuff, he did have more serious moments, and it kind of dealt with some more like darker aspects as well as the comedy, and I think it was able to blend it quite well, whereas this is a similar sort of thing. Because at its heart, if you look at the title and then go into it expecting this thing about the sexual assault to be the main plot point, which it isn't in the slightest, then you might expect it to, I guess, sort of be a satire in a way, or deal with these more serious themes in more of a comedic way. But it just tries to throw everything together, and there's just no clear direction in the way that it's performed or written.
And like, you know, like some of the more serious themes and stuff, like there is like a time and a place where you can like make fun of them and stuff and make jokes about them. But like usually when you're joking about things like about sexual assault, the joke is it's bad, rather than like this like the whole thing was just him getting angry at his family and as revenge just like using the legal system to like destroy his dad's life. Like that just annoyed me. That just wasn't funny.
The only
that seemed like a secondary plot.
Yeah. It wasn't.
The only consistent thing I felt about this film's like goal was that it was all a massive like social experiment. What could Tom Green get audiences to watch? Like, it felt like a massive like prank of just constantly doing whatever was possible to like gross people out for no reason.
It was just
like, there was so many just. I mean, there's evidence because literally at the end of the film, someone is holding up a sign saying like, "When will this movie end?"
Yeah,
and it's only an hour and a half.
It felt longer.
But they just put in random, like, awful things. Like, do you remember? Is it weirdly gory for no reason? Like when his friend like breaks his leg.
Oh yeah, and then
he starts licking the bone.
Oh no!
Why? It wasn't funny. I almost threw up.
And then that whole thing with the baby, where he's just flailing it around the room with the umbilical cord, and then
it was biting through. It was,
and then like Betty was like trying to give him a blowjob, and then like she pulls up his shirt, and he's just still got the umbilical cord taped on him. Like, why?
What was the point of that?
I don't know. I mean, it felt like for some reason it was trying to set things up earlier in the film that then came back later on, which is
like that kid that kept getting hurt.
But
where it didn't feel. It felt like it was supposed to be an ongoing gag, but it didn't work. You know, it's like kind of Kenny dying in South Park every episode. It felt like it was supposed to be like that, but it wasn't. It didn't feel like it was a running gag. It was just a weird thing that kept popping up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then he gets like, I don't understand what happens to him at the end, because he's supposed to get like shredded by the plane propeller, but then he also says, "I'm fine."
When he first gets injured, does he deliberately run into the car? I couldn't really tell, or was he meant to trip? Because it looked like he just ran face first into the car, and I was like, "What?" That was his introduction to this film, and then he kept on coming back.
Yeah, and at first, maybe I wouldn't have hated this film too much, because one of the things I wrote down was just saying same thing multiple times equals joke. But it actually got a lot worse. Because it's like, he would say something mildly funny, like the "I'm a 28-year-old man" thing, when his mum's like saying that her boy's all grown up. And then he would just constantly say that, like, "I'm a 28-year-old man" over and over, and then all the other characters
I want to eat a
"He's
chicken
a 28-year-old
sandwich."
man. Yeah, it's like, oh, shut up. Why are you saying it over and over?
I want a sandwich. I'm 28 years old.
Even stuff that wasn't just utterly repulsive in the film was like wrong. Like right at the start, okay, so he's going to go to Los Angeles to go to Hollywood, and his parents have bought him the bus ticket. Yes, they say that. He says to them, "You bought me a bus ticket," and then they say, "We don't want you to go on the bus. We've bought you a car." So why did you buy him a bus ticket if you're then going to have to stop him going on the bus to get him to go in the car? Why did they buy him the car when later in the film they obviously despise it? Oh, it's because they want him to go away. Oh, okay, mate. I get.
But I still don't understand why couldn't they have just given him the car, or like stuck with the bus ticket. I don't know. And also,
what did you? Go on.
No, it's just. Also, can we talk about the character assassination of his dad? Like, I mean, he wasn't like a great character to begin with. He was just kind of there, just like, get a job, get out my basement. You know, but then like once he like accuses him of sexual assault, then like he just like goes insane, and then like, oh you know the classic joke of like he's angry with him, and so he's just like, "Oh, come and do you want to come and have sex with me?" And he pulls his pants down and stuff, and then his wife, who doesn't believe the accusations, comes down and sees him doing that, and then she leaves him, and it's funny. I
mean, everything after that, like every scene the dad is in, his only role is to go in, shout, smash things, leave.
Yeah, but that's more than what they did with his mum. I feel like she was just so absent in this film, because it seemed like every opinion she had was just because at the start it was meant to be presented like, oh, his dad wants him to go, but his mum doesn't, and then you never really get a perspective of how she's react to these allegations until she just leaves, and then is that the last time you see her in the film?
Yeah.
I
just feel like they handled that character awfully.
What character? Wasn't any character there.
The casting choice of the mother, though, kind of reveals a bit of insight into what they were thinking during this film, because she was actually in Airplane. I think she was a love interest for the main character.
Oh, the Anna stuff.
Yeah. So it kind of shows that they felt like this was going to be a similar thing to Airplane, but
Yeah, she's in two of the greatest comedies of all
wasn't.
time. Then
I mean, okay, if you're thinking of it like that, then I guess I can see some comparisons, because there are, some scenes in Airplane where it's just like wacky and weird and stuff, but the whole thing about like when the planes are landing and the guy looks like Donald Trump's just sweating, and
yeah,
obviously the co-pilot and stuff like that. It's like, but Airplane did it well. This film just
it was actually original. It seemed like this just tried to throw together a load of like really predictable things that don't really belong in a film. They just seemed like sort of YouTube pranks that had just been compiled together.
Yeah,
and there was no real care of anything to do with character development or any sort of coherence with the plot, because there wasn't really a plot, and it was just like someone with a really short attention span just going like, oh yeah, let's do that, and then 1 minute later we need a completely other thing to focus on, and it's just an insult to anyone that's watching it. It's just an insult to their intelligence.
It's like YouTube prank videos, or like I guess like stuff like the videos that like Filthy Frank did, where he'd go out in public and like be like, "Can I have a hamburger, please?" or like scream or something, and like I guess that like you can find them funny as like one-offs and stuff, but like when it's like a film with a character where it's like you're actually supposed to be...
With a budget of $14 million.
Oh, don't even...
Didn't even think to look at the budget.
Upgrade had a budget of $5 million. That's not even adjusting for, like, inflation, and managed to, like, create something, like, really good with, like, really good special effects as well. And this film... What did they blow their budget on? I don't recognise any of the actors apart from, as you say, the woman who was in Airplane.
Shaquille O'Neal.
Barrymore, but that was his girlfriend at the time.
Shaquille O'Neal was randomly in.
Oh yeah, that was the whole budget, and also the soundtrack licensing probably.
Oh yeah, true. Oh my gosh! Every time I recognised a song on the soundtrack, I was just like, "What are you doing in this film?" I had like Gary Newman, like Moby, like Eminem. The
Green Day.
Like right at the end, it just was playing like the real Slim Shady, and I was just like, what? Tonally, what has this got to do with the film?
The film like constantly had music playing. Like it would switch from like funny music to somber music to like disastrous music, like so fast. Like there was always something on.
Yeah,
it was.
That's what I love about like the attention span thing,
It's
and I feel like sometimes I don't know if it was just me, but sometimes it seemed like the sound mixing was really bad. Like the music was way too loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, it basically...
And they got the dubbing wrong. I mean, well, in one point that I noticed, where
but there was
no idea what their dad is.
But it was the funny joke because the helicopter was loud and she couldn't hear him.
It was funny.
That was funny.
It was funny, except that you could hear her perfectly, but he was quiet. What? Okay.
Funny joke.
Oh, the music joke really like irked me by about halfway through, because like when it was like playing at like points of the film, it was just like, here is some music that is sad. You are supposed to feel sad as the audience. Like I know that's kind of the purpose of a soundtrack, but like it just felt so patronizing,
manipulative.
Like it was like the low point of the film. It just played like Moby's Natural Blues. It's just like, he is sad. You should be sad. He's got the blues. Guys, come on. It's like
there was maybe a bit of promise when I'm not gonna say that I liked, but a bit that was less bad than the rest was when he, as you were saying before about him kind of having all those doubts about whether he's making the right choices, and when he goes and confronts Betty, and the scene. I mean, it then devolves into some like stupidity when that person goes and asks for more cheese in the sandwich, and they just like chucks all the ingredients at her. But I can't. But after that, when he's like looking at the TV, and I think that could maybe have been, if it was in another film, that could have been handled quite well, like that idea of him like doubting and like that deep kind of comprehension of whether he's making the right decisions. And I guess at that point you kind of understand his character a bit more, but then because immediately before and after that he then turns into like a 3-year-old again, it like just spoils any moments of promise from beforehand.
Yeah, that was one of the times of the film where it was just like, yeah, come on guys, we need to add some character development moments, and it just felt stupid. Like,
Yeah.
any other film, even Kangaroo Jack, it could have worked in. I mean, not specifically like that particular thing, but like the idea of like having some sort of character development, like maybe, you know, like I don't know, like Lewis could have gone something like, "Oh, it's actually all my fault, but it's bad that the kangaroo stole the jacket, and you know, maybe we should respect animals or something." Speaking of respecting animals, I'm just gonna go back to that scene with the moose, and it was.
Please
We
don't.
haven't talked about the elephant scene yet.
Yeah,
We don't
so
need
to really say. Just
all that there
watch
really
it.
is to say is an
Well,
elephant.
Don't watch it.
actually. Yeah.
There's an elephant penis, and the elephant gets excited, and there's 2 characters there. I think you can piece together what happened, so it's really funny.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This
Mm,
film like did so many like late 90s, early 2000s stuff, like that opening title sequence where every time like a name came on, it went like like that sound
what
effect
was
with the
that?
skateboard. and then twice in the film it like did the someone says a funny thing and then the music goes like Pew! I was like, oh no.
What do you think went through their minds to decide to cut the scene where he's drinking the milk from the cow? Thinking, oh, actually, I think that should be a deleted scene.
A
'cause that-
brief flash of sanity.
yeah. What did you make of the cartoon sequence near the middle of the film, where
I
it showed
mean-
his cartoon?
Production-wise, it was quite good. Like, the animation was alright. But, like,
Yeah.
content-wise, it was just
But
the
I hated
same.
just
Look at my
Gordon
hooves!
constantly going like, "Oh, look at my hooves! Look
like,
at my hooves, the funny hooves."
It's like, okay, yeah, it's funny hooves. Cool. It's like, we came to America to get work. Cool, look at my hooves. Yeah, can you stop about the hooves? But my dad is bad and weird and silly. Look at my hooves.
So awful. I want to erase this film from my memory.
Right, let's go on with doing
Actually, I don't
that.
want to, because then someone will force me to watch it again. So
Right, let's get on
I
with
don't know
that
what I want to
process
do.
and get it wrapped up and reviewed, rated. The
how long
3
have we
Rs.
talked about this film?
39 minutes.
Really?
Oh my-
Wow. I feel like my hatred should take longer than that.
There's a pretty good review here from a critic who gave it a 0 and said, "This movie doesn't scrape the bottom of the barrel. This
Oh, yeah,
movie
Roger
isn't the
Eads
bottom
bit.
of the barrel. This movie isn't below the bottom of the barrel. This movie doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same sentence with barrels."
Yeah.
I'll make it easy for you guys.
The legend
0.3.
Roger Ebert. 0.3.
That's your rating.
Just in case there's anything that's worse. I don't think there is. But like,
What redeeming qualities can you think?
Well,
that
I want to
that
give
gives it
some
a
prop
0.3.
to
Some
the
good
to the
music.
prop designers that made these disgusting scenes. I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to give some credit to them. I want to
It
give
wasn't
some
their
credit.
fault that they had to deal with
Yeah.
this awful script. They did
Some
what they
credit to
commissioned to do.
the cinematography wasn't awful. And that is it.
I mean,
So
I
And the
wouldn't say
songs
that
were
it ever
cool.
dragged, but it was way too fast paced.
I think I'm going to agree with Ben and say 0.3.
Okay.
Watch
Wow,
Ollie give it a
we're really-
0.4, and then we'll just wreck him.
We're really breaking the boundaries here. With a couple of weeks ago, we got a 9.7, and now we're going down to the zeros. We're not doing sevens anymore. Let's go.
No.
I just realised this film came out in 2001, and that 2001: The Space Odyssey. Maybe
That's the
that was
link.
predicting Fred. Yeah, that's the
I
link. So
saw-
I'm also going to give it an what's it give 2001? I'm going to give this a 9.5 as well.
What?
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Right. I'll give it a 0. Okay, we'll go with a unanimous 0.3.
Yes, get in.
Nice.
Oh man. Something I was gonna say and I've forgotten it now. At least it's lowered the median a bit. It's probably gone from 7.5 to 7.4.
What else has Tom Green done? Because I hate this man.
Watch him have been
I've
involved
never
in
watched
like Blade Runner or something.
Yeah.
It was like the fucking assistant director.
I do not think he was.
Why not?
Did you know the footage of that surgery? Do you remember that bit in the film? There was surgery footage.
No.
Well, that was I can't remember, but that was actual footage of
Oh yeah, I
when
remember
he had
that.
testicular cancer, and
Wasn't
he
that
got
in the-
a tumor removed.
Oh,
That's Tom Green's actual
wasn't that
surgery
in the?
footage.
Wasn't that in the the place where Freddy went? They were watching.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Right.
let's see filmography. He's in Malcolm in the Middle. Why? He's in an episode.
The Malcolm and Marie.
Bob the Butler. Phew, that was close.
Can we fix it? No, we can't because Tom Green exists.
He's in the Eric Andre show.
I mean, that kind of
What?
makes sense.
Yeah.
Given Eric Andre's humor.
That's the only things I
Yeah.
really
So
recognise.
the moral of the
care about.
story is, if you ever hear the name Tom Green,
Run
then
as
just
fast as
avoid
you
that
can.
Run away.
at all
He's
costs.
coming for you. He'll infect you with his funny ha-ha penis and flailing a baby around and sexual assault and disabled people
Gore,
jokes.
licking bones.
Yeah, he'll lick your bones. He will eat your umbilical cord. He will stop at the side of a road with a deer corpse and envelop himself in the deer corpse and run after you with the revitalized strength of a deer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
What
we
a
have a
film.
submission spotlight, except we don't really because no one ever submits, so submit. Thank you. Recommendation time.
I don't know if I should recommend anything.
I don't.
Well, do it. Anything apart
But
from this.
two really good things though.
Well, yeah, well, it can make up for this a bit.
Okay. So, first thing is a bit more standard. I watched the Paul Thomas Anderson film There Will Be Blood. It was very good. I can
What's
tell
the
you,
blood?
Will there be
it was
blood?
in the barrel, as Roger Ebert would say. There was blood.
Much
It's
as in Freddy Got Fingered, would you say?
I don't think there is
More or less
actually,
blood.
but it's kind of got a Western vibe, except it's set in the early 1900s and is about an oil man.
Oil man?
So he goes
Oil
digging
man.
for oil.
That's what every
Um,
oil can.
But it's a really good drama, and this kind of shows the corruption of power and the fight for power between the main conflict is between the businessman, the oil man, and a priest played by Paul Dano, and their kind of conflict of power. And there's great acting, very like visceral. The only thing I would say is that I'm not sure about the ending. It felt like it kind of petered out, even though it ends with a very like intense final scene. It didn't really feel like an ending, if that makes sense. But like the characters, memorable, and just even I think some people said that they found it boring, which makes no sense because there's like literally a scene of like with a huge explosion and a constant like running around and oil going everywhere and stuff like there's lots of intense bits. It's very good, so you should watch that. And then the other thing, which is a bit less normal, is that I've been watching a Dungeons and Dragons show called Fantasy High, which is technically part of Dimension 20, but it manages, because I've tried in the past to watch D&D shows and they've all been like really long and drawn out, but this manages to keep the episodes only 2 hours each, but there's not like hundreds and hundreds of them like something like Critical Role, and it's engaging and the characters are good and everyone's good at improvising and stuff, so it's solid.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah. Go watch that and not Freddy Got Fingered.
I'm afraid
Please.
I already have.
No.
What if I told you now that
no.
I didn't watch Freddy Got Fingered, I just read the IMDb description. If there's one week I wish I could have done that, it's this week. Right, my recommendation. A while ago I recommended a podcast, The Weekly Planet, and one of the hosts of that has another podcast called Suggestible, where he like recommends stuff with his wife. But that's not what I'm recommending. It's all right, but on one of the episodes of that, his wife recommended a podcast that I've listened to.
And you're not recommended that one either. You just recommending something that was recommended on it.
They talk about a film, and in that film, it's
you're not
based on a book. So I'm going to be recommending that book. No.
Wait. What's going on?
I can't tell if you're joking or not.
No, I am. Right, so I'm recommending a podcast that was recommended on a podcast that is hosted by the same person as another podcast that I've recommended in the past.
This is more convoluted than the
on the podcast called Entertainment of Excellence Podcast.
Is this adaptation again?
Okay, I massively overcomplicated this, but the podcast is called
Freddy Fingered Freddy Fingered Freddy.
It's called Who the Hell is Hamish, and it's Australian, and it's basically it's based on a true story that kind of tracks the life of this professional con man who is like this compulsive liar who he gets all these relationships with different people and kind of persuades them to invest money with him with the hopes that he'll be able to, have higher returns. But in reality, he just cons them, and he's able to like sort of create these different identities in which he comes up with these massively fabricated backstories of, like, he tells some people that he ran over his twin brother when he was younger. It turns out he didn't even have a twin brother. Stories about how his parents have died when that's not true. And the podcast, I think there's 10 episodes in total, and it has loads of different interviews with a lot of the people involved. So one of the main storylines that it follows is his wife, who so her son went out with this girl when they were about 16, I think. Hamish started to have an affair with her, so he's also like he was like this predatory man, and apparently he was sort of very emotionless and sociopathic. But in the end, he was actually caught. And the last episode is kind of, I guess, that like satisfying feeling of being able to capture him. But the only issue is that I think he's in total has stolen about $30 million or something from various different families and individuals. But just before he was arrested, he managed to kind of secure that in loads of offshore foreign accounts, and none of that's been tracked down. So there were some people involved who actually wanted to kind of prolong the case before he was arrested in order to try and secure that money, but it's now kind of accepted that it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to trace back the money. But at least there's kind of that justice of him being locked up. So that's a pretty cool podcast. I also watched. Have either of you seen Bo Burnham's Inside on Netflix?
I have.
No.
Yeah, I watched that as well, and it was cool.
It's good, Ben.
It is.
But the Freddy got fingered.
I would say
marginally.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's quite similar.
Yeah.
Have you got anything, Ben?
No. Not really. Like, and if I did, I wouldn't want to taint it with Freddy got fingered, so...
Why don't you just recommend
Obviously.
Freddy Got Fingered?
Right, so guys, I recommend Freddy Got Fingered. It's this beautiful, amazing masterpiece of a film. Like, have you seen 2001: A Space Odyssey? Better than that. It's so good. The way it utilizes surreal comedy to create a sort of unexpected, unpredictable, yet absolutely hilarious plot by using a character that you really anyone can relate with, because the struggles he goes through and the development that he has, every one of us has to go through on our path through lives, and he's just the most relatable character. Yeah, so go watch Freddy Got Fingered. It's an hour and a half long, but trust me, you'll feel like you're gonna feel like you've got 2 hours worth of great material packed into that small film. So yeah, go watch it. Legally buy it too, so that Tom Green gets your money. He deserves it. He's
a great man.
He's a one-man powerhouse who both wrote, directed, and starred in this film. Like
Bo Burnham.
Yeah, he's a jack of all trades. You know, he's a Renaissance man. Ever heard of Donald Glover? Yeah, he's better than that. He's better at comedy too.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
I think with that
You've
recommendation,
convinced me.
we should wrap up.
Yeah, cool. Follow us on
Say what we're
social
doing
media.
next week.
Have we decided?
We can now.
I mean, we need something
Can
that's
we?
not like terrible. I don't think I can
List.
cope.
What have we got in the future episodes thing? Is someone gonna
Following.
randomly pick something?
Sure. Right.
We should watch USSR Lord of the Rings.
We should. Except
Probably
I
watch
don't
Lord of
actually
the
know
Rings
how
first, though.
terrible that's going to be, because, like, I mean, objectively it looks terrible, but, like, it could be quite enjoyable.
We'll just have to decide later.
Following.
Why
How
don't
about
we
that?
Alright,
Yeah,
we'll
That's
do
the
following
oldest one.
Okay.
Cool.
then. And speaking of following, why don't you follow us?
Yeah, follow
Yeah.
us on social media. We never post on either of them, but please follow us just to show your support. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that... Oh yeah, the
Alright,
website
so you-
exists, which we actually
Oh.
do update now. But, like, no one cares about that. Don't go do it. Like, Ollie's only putting in hours upon hours a day of his sweat and tears and blood to make sure that website's updated for you. The 0 listeners we have right now, just, you need to go and show your support right now, but not on the website. With that, alright, see you.
Right, suit you.
Yeah, that sounds good.